Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Harrison Buck. I'm with Supplied Energy. And today we welcome Mark Crinella with Sol-Ark to talk about their all-in-one hybrid inverter and how they can help facilitate true energy independence. Just really quick, I wanted to mention that this webinar will be recorded and sent to the participants afterwards. And also, please put your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to answer all of them in the webinar today. And really encourage you to ask questions since this webinar is for you guys. And with that, let's get started. So here's a little bit about our team. We're here hosting with us today is our president, Kyle Smith, as well as Valerie and Mallory. And these are a few other faces from the Supplied Energy team. And these are the guys who make our team run so smoothly. We have a little blurb about each one of us on our website if you want to go check that out. We currently have locations in Austin, which is where I'm currently working from this week, as well as Catoosa, Greenville, and Newnan, which is basically the Austin Metro, Tulsa Metro, St. Louis Metro, as well as the Atlanta Metro. So a little bit about us. If you joined us for our last webinar with HomeGrid and the one with Savant before that, you learned a little bit about what we do and who we work for. We like to get very involved as much as we can to help our customers, and we want to be a behind the curtain partner, so to speak. We serve installers, developers, loopers, drillers on the geothermal side, home and business owners, electric utility, builders, architects, as well as engineers. And what we're looking to do as a company is we are a wholesale distributor, and we want to be able to offer projects a complete electrification package. We do that through trainings. We offer design services, retail sales support, pipe fabrication, feasibility studies, as well as planning. So these are our product categories, and today we are in the power product segment. We also have a complete side of our company that is on heating and cooling, anywhere from mini splits to geothermal installations, as well as air source products. The energy monitoring and load management side includes product from Savant Power, with whom we did a webinar in the past. So if you'd like to get a recording of that, feel free to reach out. And that segment of our business pairs with our power product segment. They communicate directly with Sol-Ark and HomeGrid as well. We also offer heating and piping fabrication as well for energy transfer. So we do that in 4 steps. First, we tighten the envelope. We heat and cool with electric source. Ideally, that would be an air source or a ground source heat pump. And we generate power with solar. And then we store that power for use at a separate time. We do this to control the complete envelope of a home or a building. And we like to keep things as tight as we possibly can, shift the demand, and then use our power products to connect people to the grid, as well as offer energy independence. So a little bit about those 4 steps. The home in this photo here has a geothermal. It has energy monitoring. It's generating its own power with solar. And it has a super tight envelope as well, making this home all electric and net zero, which is the goal. This home is actually located in Illinois, and it's a really nice installation. This home here we did with a HomeGrid battery and a Sol-Ark 15K, as well as the Savant load management. And this project utilizes the built-in 200 amp pass-through, which the 15K offers, which I'm sure Mark will get into in a minute here. This home, like I said, it has geothermal. It has a 5-stack HomeGrid battery, Sol-Ark 15K, and the Savant Power load management, making this house use the utility as little as possible. And like I said, so that's what we're going for here with our 4 steps and the smart energy products that we sell. So that's just a little bit about us and how the segments of our business operate and how they tie together. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Mark with Sol-Ark.
Yeah, hi everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Mark Cornell. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. I do distribution management for Sol-Ark. I started out on the engineering team here, so feel free to ask any questions or anything from technical to sales throughout this webinar. Okay. And please, yeah, just keep your questions in the chat, and then once we have them towards the end, we'll try to address each one as we go across. All right, we'll be going through our Sol-Ark 12K and 15K installation today. Just a very shallow crash course on how to do the wiring of the inverter. But first, a little bit about our company. We started in 2013 by 5 engineers and 2 U.S. veteran investors. Over time, we've seemed to grow a lot, about 200% year over year in growth for the last 7 years. We're even going to be in one of Dallas's top 100 growing businesses tonight. Actually, it's pretty exciting. 100% of our engineer and final assembly is done and supported out of Plano, Texas. We will be moving into a larger facility here shortly, into about a 300,000 square foot building, so we can make sure we'll still have product on hand for everyone. We're entirely based out of Texas. That's where we're going to stay for the time being, and we're open for visits and tours as well. So if you want to see the product firsthand, we do provide installation training on site. If you ever would like to have an install modeled after your next install, we can actually recreate it here. So as long as you schedule that training with us, we can recreate that install and make sure that you are 100% certain that it'll be appropriate for the next homeowner. A little bit about Sol-Ark and what kind of tools we can provide you. First of all, we have a solar panel sizing tool. So if you're looking at our hybrid inverters and you select your PV panel, and you're wondering how to fit it into our Sol-Ark's MPPTs, well, that sizing tool is going to tell you how many strings and then how many panels you can have in series will stack into our Sol-Ark MPPTs. And then it'll even calculate the temperature compensation that you may need to adjust for your area. We also have a battery calculator tool that gives you a rough estimate of battery backup size. It's more for the homeowner that's curious about the product and wants an estimate of battery backup size for their home. We also do complimentary design reviews by our support staff. So maybe you have a one-line diagram or electrical riser diagram with the Sol-Ark inverter implemented into it. We can actually review it here if you send it to our support or sales email. We'll be able to give it a review, make sure that it works appropriately with your application, and give you the 100% go-ahead for that project. We do have live engineering support 7 days a week. It really differentiates us from our competitor manufacturers. And we have all our support located out of Dallas, Texas. You can even call us on a Saturday or Sunday when you're doing an install, or if maybe you have a homeowner that system went down on the weekend and you want to get power restored. We can even help you out then. Then we also have ongoing monitoring and troubleshooting assistance. With our Sol-Ark inverters, as long as you connect it to a Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection, we can monitor your home as well. We can see any of the data, the input and output of the Sol-Ark inverter. And from that data, we can determine what issues are going on. We can even remotely change settings from distance. Our support team, I really love those guys. They even do proactive error support. So if we see an error roll up across our system, we'll reach out to your homeowner or customer, say, this is the error that happened, this is the reason why, and this is how you fix it. So we just want to make sure any of our customers are in good hands. Another testament to our world-class engineering support, we get a lot of reviews on Energy Sage. Right now, we're at 146 5-star. I believe we're much higher than that now. It's our preferred review support, but we only believe in quality here. We want to make sure that we have that support for you. So if you ever do have an issue, maybe a pre-wiring question, a programming question, we're going to be there every step of the way. We can actually walk you through that commissioning process and get you set up within 30 minutes. And then you're done with the install, ready to move on to the next. Now to talk about how our Sol-Ark is that slim profile all-in-one solution. As opposed to our other competitors, you may have done other installs before. You'll see different MPPTs and charge controllers and AC breakers all over the wall, increasing that bill of materials. With Sol-Ark, you're going to get an all-in-one solution. All the parts and pieces or materials are needed are inside the Sol-Ark inverter and its wiring area. This is an example of a Sol-Ark 15K. We'll go through across some of the components of it. We have high voltage MPPTs at the Sol-Ark 15K. We have 3 separate MPPTs that you can fix 2 strings each, so a total of 6 strings of solar into the Sol-Ark 15K. It is a transformerless technology, so it is going to be the most efficient on the market. We have an adaptable 48-volt charge controller that is battery agnostic. You can use any 48-volt battery solution with our inverter. Typically, you're going to see the most commonly used today is lithium iron phosphate for its longevity and larger depth of discharge. But we can work with lead acid batteries, flow batteries, NMC batteries. Really, chemistry is your choice. As long as it's 48 volts, it'll work with us. And we do have a number of battery manufacturers that we partner with on our website. I think we're around 15 battery manufacturers that we have closed loop communications with, and I'll kind of touch on that later. And we're continuing to grow. So hopefully we'll have your battery manufacturer of choice adaptable with our unit in the future. And the fantastic thing about the Sol-Ark 15K is we have a 200 amp bypass. So that means you can actually land the backup portion of the inverter onto the top lugs of a 200 amp service panel. And what we'll do is if we can't provide the power and you're grid tied, we're going to pull that power from the grid, provide it to the loads. And then the second we lose that grid connection, we have an internal relay that'll disconnect within 5 milliseconds. That's UPS grade speeds. It'll disconnect and isolate us from the grid and continue to provide power to that load output. We also have arc fault monitoring and ground fault monitoring, protect your PV and make sure there's no ground faults in the system. And we can integrate with any generator. It's a great tertiary power source. You can connect to any 240 volt or 208 generator, and we can automatically start that generator via a 2-wire start based off the battery's programmed state of charge. It really helps you, utilize the generator when only needed, so you're not running it constantly. Going to a couple of our models, we're going to really touch heavily on the 12 and the 15K, but we do have 2 other models we currently sell. We have a 5K single phase. That's a single phase inverter that only outputs 120. It's great for off-grid cabins with small loads like ACs, lights, fans, and the such. Then our next model is the Sol-Ark 8K. It's that mid-range model for homeowners that have an efficient house. Then the Sol-Ark 12K was one of our staples for quite some time. And then finally the Sol-Ark 15K, which came out May of this year. It's been our most popular model yet. Each inverter has a different DC amount of solar that you can connect directly to the MPPTs, but the same voltage range on those MPPTs. We can also do something called AC coupling. I'll touch a little further on that, but just to touch on that subject, you can connect micro-inverters or maybe another string level inverter that doesn't have the ability to add energy storage, and you can run it through our system and we'll add the controls for it and provide that signal off grid. Our inverters are also known for having a higher peak power. So maybe the homeowner has a large air conditioning unit, maybe a large well pump that's a 2 or 3 horsepower. Well, as long as it's within our peak power range, we can provide a 10-second peak power to make sure those products and appliances will start up appropriately. And then our inverters are parallel stackable. The 5K 1P is now parallel stackable. And then the Sol-Ark 12 and 15K are stackable. The 12K, you can go up to 9 units. In the 15K, you can go up to 12 units. 5-year warranties on the 1P and the 8K, expandable to 10 years. And the Sol-Ark 12 and 15K come standard with a 10-year warranty. They also come with the NEMA 3R enclosure. That means you can mount it outside in the rain and dust, and it's going to be fine. There's no exposed electronics on the inverter. It just has some ventilation in the back that exposes the heat sinks, but you can run a hose through it and it'll still continue to work. We just recommend keep it out of direct sunlight and make sure that battery bank, if you do have cold areas, is stored in nice climate that's temperature controlled. Also, since we are an all-in-one installation, this is an example of simplifying your install. All you need for external parts and pieces will be your PV array, a 48-volt battery, your backup panel or your main electric 200 amp panel, and then your utility service. The only extra piece that you'll see in between here is typically an AC disconnect between the utility and the grid connection of the Sol-Ark inverter. Now let's go across a couple of features of our product. First of all, we have a 48 volt charge controller inside our Sol-Arks. Again, it's fast, efficient, up to 99% for safe charging. We're optimized for lithium and lead acid batteries, and we can charge that battery not only from a DC source or the PV connected to the inverter, but we can also charge from external AC sources as well. That means we can charge from a grid, we can charge from a backup generator, or we can charge from an AC coupled source. Our voltage range on the battery terminal can go down as low as 43 volts before it disconnects and charge up to 59 volts. We can even charge higher than that with appropriate temperature compensation programmed in the inverter, up to 63 volts. And on the right-hand side, we have just a small list of some of our battery communication partners that we have closed loop communications to their BMS. That stands for Battery Management System. It's a small little chip inside the battery that tells it how to operate and holds a slew of safety features on it. That BMS will talk to the Sol-Ark inverter, and then the Sol-Ark inverter will read the settings, it'll report the state of charge and follow any of the charge settings and charging voltage, charging current that the battery requires. So it's really going to operate towards the battery manufacturer's specifications, as long as you have that closed loop settings working with our Sol-Ark inverter. And we also have an integration guide on how to help you out that you can find on our website. For example, you see we work with Fortress, HomeGrid, Simplify, PowerSync, Stores Power, Blue Planet, VillaGrid, and many, many more that you can find on the Sol-Ark website. Going on to the DC portion, here's an example of the MPPTs inside the Sol-Ark 15K. Just a touch on MPPT, it stands for Maximum Power Point Tracker. We can fit up to 6 strings into this current model. You can actually do 3 strings on a single MPPT if you do parallel upstring. That typically is not needed nowadays, mostly because most panels are going to have a very similar rating on open circuit voltage and current. So for example, you see the MPPTs have each 2 positives and 2 negatives. That's where it actually gets paralleled. So you put 2 strings there, and then you have a single string left over. You can actually put on MPPT 2 or 3. And the voltage is actually going to be isolated between each unit. So it's fantastic. Maybe you have a different panel manufacturer and the homeowner's trying to piecemeal some parts together. Well, put it on separate MPPTs and that voltage difference won't matter anymore. Or maybe you just have an odd amount of panels. And so you'll build on MPPT 2 or 3 to a different value. We can connect up to 19.5 kilowatts of DC coupled solar at the MPPTs. And then for the AC coupling portion, we can actually connect up to 19.2 kilowatts simultaneously. So with the AC and DC fully maxed up, you can actually get up to 34 kilowatts of cell back to the grid or to the loads during the daytime, and even in an off-grid situation. As long as the battery bank is at a lower state of charge, the entirety of the DC and AC array will be utilized. Going further on the DC connections, we're going to talk a little bit about the battery terminals. On the left-hand side, that's a battery terminal from the Sol-Ark 15K. That's all going to be in that same user wiring area that we talked about. You can use 2-gauge wire for your battery terminals, and you can actually parallel it at the battery terminal as well, between 0 and 12 feet. And if you have some distance, 12 to 20 feet, we recommend using 4-gauge. Sorry, 2-aught and 4-aught, my apologies there. We'll be using 4-aught wiring and make sure that we can meet the maximum current and make sure that there's not too much voltage drop. The more voltage drop you have in a battery bank, the more capacity you're missing out from it. So we don't want that to happen. They're about 3/8 of an inch for lug connections. The only time you'll ever hurt it if you do the wrong polarity. So please do not. They're very clearly labeled positive and negative. And then when adjusting your battery termination onto that terminal, it's going to take about 90 inch-pounds of torque rating. For the solar connection, for that wiring, you can do about 12-gauge wiring from 0 to 100 feet, but we can extend it all the way down to 300 feet before there's an unacceptable voltage drop. I think about 3%. You can use 10-gauge wiring. Now, let's say your array is much further away, 400 or 500 feet. What you're going to do is probably combine the array upstream. Once you combine it in a DC combiner panel, you'll just use a larger gauge wire, run it to the inverter, 400 and 500 feet away, and then split that wire back to an acceptable gauge so they can actually connect to our MPPT connections. When connecting that wire, you want to make sure to strip that wiring back about 5/8 of an inch before landing it. Do not ground to PV like you used to. For those old school guys, we don't have a positive or negative grounding for those PV lines anymore. It's not as very common. If you have two strings on the same MPPT, please keep them equal in a parallel setting. It means it will affect the voltage if you have an unequal amount of strings of, a string of 6 and a string of 8 on MPPT1. That will affect the voltage. And if you do accidentally reverse polarity on the MPPT, you'll just get 0 volts on the inverter. It won't damage it, but it will tell you that you swapped it. Going on to the AC connections, we have those 3 AC connections. We have the generator, the grid connection, and the load connection. Let me double check one something. I will go on the next. Those are going to be the AC in and out of the Sol-Ark inverter. They're all bidirectional connections capable of operating on a variety of electrical surfaces. They come standard at 120/240 split phase for your normal house in the USA here. We can also do 208 3-phase. If you stack multiple inverters, you can actually do an even balanced 208 3-phase if you stack 3. If you do 2, you can get unbalanced 208 3-phase. And if you do a single inverter, you can get 2 of the 3 legs. So you can still operate on 3-phase as well. And then maybe you do have a unique situation installing somewhere in the Bahamas, Africa, Europe. We can do 220 volt single phase on 50 hertz if need be. But we always operate default at 60 hertz. And then these are the AC connections I was speaking about before. Your grid connection will typically, with the Sol-Ark 15K, will just connect into an AC disconnect. That'll go directly to a meter. If you're using our Sol-Ark 12K, please take in mind the 125% rule. If you're connecting that connection into a service panel, you want to make sure it's rated for that backfeed breaker of the inverter's output. The 8 to 12K, the AC connection wire size can be around anywhere from 6 to 4 gauge. If you ever go up past 100 feet, use 4 gauge wiring. Again, keep that same strip length at 5/8 of an inch. And for the 8 and 12K, do about 26.5 inch-pounds. And then for the 15K, do 62 inch-pounds in torque rating when connecting onto those lugs. The 15K's AC wiring is going to be a little thicker. You could do up to 2 aught. And then you can strip that wiring back 5/8 inch as well. If you're doing parallel systems, please remember to combine all the inverter's inputs and outputs before landing. So for example, if you use 2 15Ks, you can use a Polaris connector for 2 systems that are easily combined. But if you're using 3 or more inverters, just use an AC combiner panel. It's going to keep everything pretty easy. And then if you're doing a 3-phase install, do pay attention to our installer's manual that we have online. It will tell you how to keep phasing consistent. And if you have any questions before operation, just give us a call so we can actually verify that phasing with you. Again, talking more on the 2-way 3-phase, like I mentioned before, again, you can do it with a single unit, 2 units unbalanced, and 3 units for a balanced 3-phase application. After that point, if you would like to stack more inverters, 3, 6, 9, or 12, they have to be in groups of 3. It must be a Y transform for 208Y. We cannot do delta at this time. And then again, if you want limited backup, you could use 2 inverters and it'll still apply for your situation. Talk about stacking systems. Again, the Sol-Ark 15K can stack up to 12 inverters. So you can actually use this for a small commercial project. We have about 600 amps of continuous AC output for off-grid power if you're to stack 12, and that'd be a fantastic feat to see. But you cannot parallel with our legacy hardware. So if you are stocking some of our very old equipment, maybe I believe plus 2 years ago, we had an indoor rated model that it cannot communicate with. That's typically out of the market. Most of our stocking distributors are not going to have it anymore, but it is something to look out for. Sometimes maybe there's a distributor holding onto a unit that's far older than we expect, and they'll try to parallel it with the new unit. Unfortunately, all our products have been changed since October of 2020 is going to be our outdoor rated Sol-Ark 12K. And then thereon, they're all going to connect and communicate with each other. Taking a little note on rapid shutdown. So if you do a Sol-Ark install or any PV install. If you're doing roof mounted panels, you're going to require rapid shutdown. In order to connect rapid shutdown to our inverter, we have two methods of doing it. First, each solar panel will need a receiver on each, or between one receiver per two panels. And then at the Sol-Ark inverter, you'll need a transmitter of the product that you choose. We're currently compatible with Tigo, NEP, and AP systems, but we'll be coming out with our own optimizer and rapid shutdown device later down the line here. I'll kind of talk on that later. So for example, in this wiring diagram, you see two different ways to connect a transmitter. First way, I think it's easiest. You can just connect the transmitter to a power supply on the backup panel, and you can put a normally open button on pins 11 and 12 inside the Sol-Ark inverter. What this will do is just short the entirety of the AC connections of Sol-Ark, power it down, and disconnect power to the rapid shutdown power supply of the transmitter. Once the transmitter goes offline, that's going to stop sending the keep alive signal to the receivers connected to the solar panels on the rooftop. That will activate and lock in rapid shutdown, so you'll be in compliance there. The second method to do is you can actually use our 12-volt power supply to power some transmitters from rapid shutdown manufacturers. If you use our 12-volt power supply, all you have to do is tie in a normally closed button between the positive cable going into the Sol-Ark inverter at the 12-volt power supply. Once you open up that circuit, it'll disconnect the transmitter only. The inverter will still be functioning, but it'll activate rapid shutdown. That's why I always suggest the first method. It's easier and it's easier to get approved. Next, we're going to touch a little bit on our remote monitoring. And if we have some free time and you guys have some questions, I can kind of show you how to navigate the monitoring towards the end. We have 100% free for life with internet, remote monitoring, and changes to their fleet monitoring for installers on your phone or desktop. Now, I prefer the desktop application because it's a little easier to see, but the phone app is quite nifty as well to see a nice general overview that your homeowners might be able to see their PV production. They'll see how much power they're selling to the grid, how much power they're buying from the grid, and how much battery they have left, and what they're doing with the battery. Are they charging? Are they discharging? And then how much load they have on the load output of the Sol-Ark inverter. We're going to be able to tell that as well. And then we're going to go through a couple of value propositions, look at some of our competitors from Sol-Ark here. First, we're going to give you the proposition of replacing the generator. Maybe there's a lot of homeowners across the United States here that they're interested in generator backup, but they really don't know the hidden costs versus a solar system. Now, your initial buy-up cost for a generator will be much lower. You'll probably get an automatic transfer switch and a whole home generator. We valued a 14 kilowatt generator plus ATS around $4,900. And we're going to compare it to a Sol-Ark 15K with about 14.4 kilowatts of lithium iron phosphate battery and a 10 kilowatt array. Now, they'll come up to initial cost for price of materials around $21,450. But we got to look at some other factors in here. First, the transfer time. Our inverter is going to have a 5 millisecond no glitch transfer time. That means the second you lose grid, your lights are not even going to flicker, your clocks aren't going to reset, and if you have important IT server rack equipment, it's going to continue to run. Now, if you had a whole home generator, it's a 10-second transfer time. Your lights go out, you wait, ATS triggers over, generator starts up, boom, 10 seconds later, you'll have power. Next, we'll compare the noise. We're about around 25 decibels at 5 feet, but if you ever heard a generator run, even in those containers, it's about 65 decibels at 23 feet. We require no ongoing maintenance on our Sol-Ark inverters, but a generator is typically maintained about, I think, either biannually or annually, and at costs. It really does add up on the costs for constant maintenance over time. Warranty periods are going to be a lot less on a generator. Our warranty goes up to 10 years on solar, and then our expected lifespan of the Sol-Ark is up to 15 years. And then if you don't even maintain your generator, it's going to have 4 years without maintenance if you continually run. You're not going to get a tax credit for a generator either. Right now, this is calculated at the 26% tax credit. Starting next year, we're going to get retroactive 30% tax credit back next year, and then ongoing for the next 10 years. So for your lifetime savings costs, at about a 10-year cost, we'll be saving you money versus losing money to ongoing maintenance on a generator. But I still like generators. I think they're a great application. They're a great tertiary backup source for an off-grid install. I think it's almost needed to have one for off-grid, but this is just a good example to how they compare in cost. Next, we'll just go on to our cost and our bill of materials. We try to keep things easy at Sol-Ark, and our all-in-one solution really does that. So instead of purchasing multiple different pieces of materials that really add up to the cost, as long as you get our all-in-one model, plus around a 20 kilowatt hour battery bank is what we're sizing for here with the 15 kilowatt array. Well, all we need is that RSD solution plus a fused AC disconnect, and that's all you need compared to us and some of our competitors here. Just give you a small competitive analysis. For around the same price, you're going to get a higher continuous AC output by 5 kilowatts. You're going to get a much higher, about double the rated peak power. A very comparable round trip efficiency. That means from DC to battery, and then battery to AC. And then we all have that matching pass-through here. And then our generator integration has been automatic since we started. We've been working with it for quite a long time. You can even get like a 6 kilowatt Honda that's 240. We can work with that as well. We do have a high limit for max genset. On our gen connection, you can actually connect a 24 kilowatt generator with no limitation. And then if you're fully off grid, you can actually connect up to a 48 kilowatt or 200 amps generator off grid. That'll go directly to our grid input. We are capable of 208 three-phase versus our competitors. And then we do not have a prorated warranty. That means that over time, your prorated warranty will mean that the longer you have that product, the less the company's going to pay you back. So our standard 10-year warranty, and yes, at 9 years and 364 days, will cover the cost. Operating temperatures, we have a very large range. We can operate up to 140 Fahrenheit. And then our preferred chemistry of use is LFP, but we are not held down to one chemistry. Again, that's a fantastic thing, having battery agnostic ability. You can choose any battery you'd like. And that really concludes my webinar here. But before we go into the questions, I just want to show you a sneak peek of some of the new products we have coming out. I'll just kind of touch on that and we'll go back to questions here. First of all, we have our Sol-Ark optimizers, the 0900. This is just a small comparison to some of the other optimizers on the market. We're going to have a higher max current, higher max power, so you can connect to a larger panel, and a less wattage use. Then we will have power optimization available as well. It will have monitoring built in, so if you do like panel level monitoring, we'll be able to give you that here. We're also coming out with our own microinverters about Q1 of next year. We're coming out with two different models, the M1000 and M2000. It's going to be a 1,000-watt model and a 2,000-watt model, and 2-channel for the 1,000. That means you could do 2 panels, and 4-channel for them 2,000. And we're not going to let you cut off your panel's wattage either. You can actually connect a 600-watt panel to each input in each micro, and it'll be able to provide much more efficient rating. So we're not clipping you there either. You're going to be able to get either 208 or 240 volt output for cellback, and we can even operate on 50 hertz if need be. It's a CEC efficiency of 95%. We're going to have integrated Wi-Fi communication, so you don't have to buy a separate gateway either. And we're going to include our trunking cable as well. The warranty does say 25 years. I am yet to confirm that. That may be subject to change. I do apologize for having that spec in there already. And then I just want to show you just what our bill of materials is here. We're going to be a single vendor to support all of your products needed. We'll be able to provide a low-cost solution, a backup solution, our 8 and 12K, a whole home solution, our 15K. And then we're actually coming out with some C&I solutions as well. So if your company already does some commercial and industrial installs, we'll be coming out with the first 30 kilowatt inverter that operates on the single inverter that operates 208 with high voltage battery backup. And then later on, around January, we're coming out with a 60 kilowatt inverter that's 483 phase. Our optimizers and micros, and eventually in about Q2 of next year, we're actually planning on coming out with a DC fast charger as well. Don't have too much information on it yet, but it is in plans and in the works. And just an example here, you can see any of our other competitors and some of their offerings. So what we want to do here at Sol-Ark is make sure that we have each product to meet your needs, so we can be your one-stop shop for energy independence. That's it for me today. I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to questions. So if you'd like to start, we can pick a couple out here.
Yeah, Mark, you can see those in the Q&A, right? Let's just start at the top.
Yeah, sure thing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This has been fantastic. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to our company anytime, or Supply Energy. They're a fantastic source of information as well. Let's see.
Nice.
So Mr. Dan, what are people using for optimization right now for the 15K? Source Tigo right now, and Tigo is not UL certified for the 15K. Well, I don't believe we need the UL certification with Tigo. I'm not sure if it's needed, but Tigo optimizers have been the most common optimizer used with our product so far. It is third party, and all it needs to be is powered at a load backup panel. We'll power that transmitter, and then those optimizers will be on each panel. It should work appropriately. I'm not sure if there's an issue on backorder, but hopefully we can get our optimizers out sooner than later, or expected by the end of the year, or at least Q1 of next year, so you have a different solution as well.
And as far as sourcing Tigo, that's something Supplied carries. So I would recommend reaching out to us at our support email. Just let us know what you need, and we can get you a quote. That's support@suppliedenergy.com.
Definitely. Next, Joseph. Okay, so I have operating install with 15K. I need to know the proper settings to first charge batteries, second power loads, and third backfeed. Well, that's what our support staff can provide for you. Again, we have that 7 days a week support staff that we can walk you through that commissioning process. For the charging of the batteries, it depends on the battery that you use. Most battery manufacturers are going to give you a specification sheet that'll tell you how to set up the battery's charge settings at the Sol-Ark converter. If it has closed loop communications, you just set up the communications and you don't have to worry about any of the battery settings. Next, for powering the loads, the inverter is always going to primarily power loads depending on the mode of the operation. And for backfeed, all you have to do is set up grid cell. We have 4 modes of operation on Sol-Ark converters. First is grid cell. Second is limited to load, which will only feed power to load output. Grid cell and limited load can be used in conjunction of each other. If you use limited load, it'll power the loads. If you use grid cell, it'll power or sell back excess power after meeting the load demands. The next mode is limited to home. Limited to home is used for people who can't get a net meter agreement or cannot sell back to the grid, but would still like to offset their upstream loads of the inverter. It uses 2 external CT sensors between the meter and the service panel that you're providing power to read the incoming current from the grid and offset the exact amount. So we continue to feed up to the service panel, but will not feed past it towards the grid. And most importantly, you want to power loads from batteries at night until the SOC drops down to 30%. Completely doable as well. And that's going to be done through our time of use mode. You can actually program the inverter to discharge that time of use and discharge down to a specific state of charge. You can discharge at a specific rate and during a specific time of day. So for your example, you turn on time of use, and if you just want to make sure you cover the entirety of the day or whenever you want the inverter to cover the nighttime loads, you can set it from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and put that battery state of charge limit down to 30% in the Sol-Ark's programming. And then also pick the discharge rate that equals the maximum discharge rate of the battery that you set up in the battery settings. It really depends on the time of use and what mode of operation you're in. Why the tiny bus bar for the neutral connection? Well, on the 15K, we got that rectified. We noticed on launch that was an issue. And 1 month after launch, we talked to our manufacturer and we had that changed. We have a much larger ground and neutral bus bar on the Sol-Ark 15K. And if you are having issues, we can provide you with a replacement bus bar to get you a larger one. So hopefully we can meet your torque ratings as well. Next, Dan, AT Systems rapid shutdown solution needs an external power supply. Yes, output of the Sol-Ark does not provide enough power to power the transmitter. That's correct. As long as you have that an AC to DC adapter on the load output, you can power that power supply and just use the the emergency disconnect, the pins 11 and 12 with the normally open rapid shutdown button will activate rapid shutdown. On AC coupling, can they feed back directly to the AC breaker panel? I think retrofit. You can do on the load side, but we always recommend AC coupling to the gen connection of the solar converter. It is a multifunctional connection that you can run a generator in that connection, or you can AC couple on that connection as well. We prefer to AC couple on the gen connection because now we have two forms of control and we can monitor through that CT there as well. So we can tell you the entire AC output from the AC coupled connection, and we have a relay in case we need to disconnect from the AC coupled. We can go ahead and open up the relay. If you have it on the load side, we're not going to be able to monitor it because it's always going to meet the load demand first. It's going to be hard to calculate.
Mark, I can field this this question here about pricing on a set of plans. I just recommend if this person could just shoot their product details over to our support email. We can get you some pricing and a design as well. So just, again, it's support@suppliedenergy.com.
And moving to Joshua's question here, we have a Sol-Ark off-grid system with a gen and solar. One issue is we have the batteries trip and there's no solar power. The system powers off. Is there a logical way to have the gen kick on to power the inverter back on? Well, if you're having an issue with the batteries, the gen start connection is only done through a 2-wire start on our inverter. That's the only way we can actually automatically start generator. And most generator manufacturers will offer a 2-wire start conversion kit, or at least schematics on how to make your generator a 2-wire start. If the batteries trip, though, it won't be able to turn on the gen. So you'd have to use some sort of ATS, because if the batteries trip out and have an issue, as in maybe the communications trip or have an issue, I would first focus on resolving the battery issue. If it's tripping at the breaker, that means we're trying to discharge. You have the programmed current settings too high a discharge on the inverter, and you need to size the homeowner's battery to a larger battery bank so it doesn't trip anymore. It really just depends on the issue that's going on. But again, our support team's always available. You could always email support@sol-ark.com, or you can reach out to our support team at extension 2 on our main line. I'll see if I can provide that information here at the end of the call. But no, fantastic questions all around. Thank you guys for being so active with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. And we'll just give it maybe a minute here just to see if there are any other questions filing in. But if not, we can give you guys 15 minutes back of your day.
Yeah, definitely. Do you mind if I toss my contact information in the chat?
No, that'd be great.
Okay, definitely. Let's give you our main contacts here.
Yeah, I would do the same as well. And like I said, our support email is just support@suppliedenergy.com. We'd be happy to help you out. But you can reach out to me directly. I'm here in Austin today, and I'll be here for the next couple of days. So if you'd like to meet up with me, feel free to reach out. And like I said at the beginning of the webinar, it was recorded today, and we'll be sending it out to all the participants for your reference. And same goes for webinars we've done with Savant and HomeGrid as well. Feel free to reach out, and we can send you those as well. And with that, I think we could wrap up today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you, Supplied Energy, for having me on. It's always fantastic working with you guys, and hopefully continue to plan to do so in the future here. So thanks again for everyone attending.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. We really appreciate your time and joining us today. It's really helpful. Awesome. Have a great day, everybody. Wait, are you still there, Mark?
Still in line. Did I mess up my chat?
I just see that there was one more question that came in about anticipated release of the optis and the micros.
Oh, okay. They should be Q1 of next year. We were projected to release optimizers here by the end of the year, but I think a little bit delayed by just a month. So we're looking around January, February timeframe for both the optimizers and the microinverters.
Right on. Awesome. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, guys.